What's up, everybody? This is episode 90 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. Shout outs to everybody that's been supporting us thus far. For those who haven't seen any of our episodes, go check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and IGTV. But before we start, shout outs to our sponsors, the Players Circle. It's the new app for all basketball players nationwide. Go check it out on the App Store. Definitely check out the Players Circle. But without further ado, we have a very special guest on here tonight. This man has a master's degree, but also he's been a part of the game for a very, very long time. Originally from Phoenix, Arizona, he played Division I basketball at St. Bonaventure University in the 1990s and is now a trainer and an author of the upcoming book, I Am D1. Tonight, I have with us Mr. Chris Meadows. Chris, thank you for coming on to share your testimony.
Hey, I appreciate it, Dave. Man, it's not just a pleasure to be on with you tonight. Honestly, it's an honor because man, you working hard and you're creating a name for yourself. People starting to recognize the great work you do in the game, not just in New York, even all the way down here in the Carolinas. So, man, I'm honored to be on the show with you tonight.
Indeed. So let's get started. When did basketball first begin for you?
And Dave, I grew up in Phoenix, as you mentioned, and I played every sport, but I can just remember being young, man. I had two older brothers who really played ball, and I grew up watching guys who ended up playing in the league. Stevie Coulter played with Michael Jordan, so I got a chance to actually play in the Boys and Girls Club with those guys when I was just really, really young. And then, playing every day outside. And then when I got to middle school, I was fortunate enough to play in the summer leagues with the Phoenix Suns. So back in those days, like Paul Westphal was the coach at Grand Canyon College. It wasn't Grand Canyon University like it is now. It was a Grand Canyon College.
Mm-hmm.
So all the players like Larry Nance, KJ, all those players used to play, and I was the only young kid they would let play pickup with them. So I used to go get it in with those guys. So I just had a love for this game since I was very young.
Wow. So talk about growing up in Phoenix. Like, what was the basketball culture like out there?
Actually growing up in Phoenix, man, looking back, we had some really talented players. Um, my best friend, he and I, we played, since we were 8 or 9, and he actually could have played college basketball, but he played college football. He ended up playing in the NFL. We just had a lot of guys. Once I went away to college, I realized how good they were, but it was competitive. It was, you don't think of Phoenix as a hotbed, but it was very competitive, a lot of players. And I think growing up, you always think players are better in other places. But when I look back, yeah, there were a lot of bigger players in other places. But the basketball scene was pretty good growing up, so, and it was hard. You had to compete. Like I always played with older players, and, you just, if you really wanted to be good, you had to compete.
So were there summer leagues out in that area?
Yeah, we had summer leagues. We had back then it was called BCI. It wasn't so much AAU then. So
Ah.
New York used to bring out the Gauchos.
Yeah, I heard about the
I
BCI
got to know
tournament.
BCI used to be big, and I
Mm-hmm.
got to know Kenny Anderson really well because I used to compete against him. I was a year ahead of Kenny. Um, Malik Sealy played with Riverside. Since you're from New York,
Mm-hmm.
so my team and myself, we were competing with those guys at the events that I went to, and then our inner city, guys out there in Phoenix, they could really play too. We had a lot of really elite players, but we played a national schedule. Really, we played against the best players in the country. Like in my class, Larry Johnson played with the Knicks. Grandmama, he came out in '87. And I wanted to play back east. That's why I came to St. Bonaventure. I really didn't want to stay out west because back then you had Big Monday, you had Providence, and I almost went to Providence, when I think Rick Barnes was the coach there at the time. I used to see them on TV, so that was one of my final options there. Yeah.
So what was the name of the team that you used to play for in high school?
I
outside of
played for
school?
I played for two high schools. Camelback High School, um, and we were talented. Um, we were loaded. And then my last year I transferred and I played at Tempe High School because my family relocated. We moved to the Tempe area, and we
Mm-hmm.
had good players too. But that Camelback team, that team was loaded. That team was very loaded in a tough conference, tough division. A lot of Division One players came out of
Shout outs to the graduating class of 1988 at
there.
Tempe High School.
Actually, 87.
Oh, you okay? 87. Got you.
Yeah, I was 87. Yeah.
Okay. So you were 2 years ahead of Kenny Anderson.
Oh, he came out in 89.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because he played in he played in everything I played in. So he was, like I said, he was a year young. He played a year younger though. He must have played up a year. Um, but yeah, I was with Kenny and I. We know each other. He knows me. We haven't talked in years, but
Mm-hmm.
it's been a long time.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, 1987 was a good year. Let's see who was in that class. Uh, I'm checking out the McDonald's game as we speak. So you were in the class of Chris Corciani from NC State, John Crotty, Virginia, King Rice, who played at
Carolina.
UNC,
Mm-hmm.
Dennis Scott, Brian
Regional.
Shorter,
Yeah.
and you just mentioned Larry Johnson, aka Grandmama, Sean
LeBradford,
Higgins.
LeBradford Smith.
He was on that team.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Williams, rest in peace, aka Bison Dele. Marcus Liberty.
Mm-hmm. Illinois.
Wow, you got there was. I mean, that was a stacked class.
What's interesting about that class, Dave, is I was invited to the Blue Chip All American camp.
Mm-hmm.
It was held in, I think, Northern Kentucky University, right across from Cincinnati. And man, I prepared for that thing. Back then, when maybe people had trainers, I didn't. I didn't have a
Mm-hmm.
trainer, and I probably couldn't afford one. I just worked on my game by myself. But I went to that camp, and they had a lot of guys that you name right there was at that camp. And I was, I left that camp, and I was like, wow. I made that. It was like a top 15 All-Star game, and I was it's a small thing, but to me, it's something that I was really proud of. That I was awarded the best ball handler of that camp, with all those big time names there.
Wow. I mean, what's the difference between camps like exposure events now and exposure events back then?
It's the social media part.
That's true.
Wasn't no
Everything
YouTubes
was
back then.
word of mouth or in the papers or magazines.
Yeah, back then it was Street and Smith. You had to read Street Smith
Mm-hmm.
magazine, and that's where I really saw the big time player names. And to actually see those guys in person,
Right.
that was big. And I didn't get an invite to the ABCD. Back then, it was ABCD camp was held in Hackensack, New Jersey,
Yeah.
and that was like the one major camp. I mean, you could pay to go to 5-star, but ABCD was invitation only, and it was a top 100. And so that was a big indicator. And now it's run by the shoe brands, and everybody has their own thing. So it's quite different now. Landscape's totally different.
Now, what was your collegiate recruitment like in high school?
It got pretty busy. I had a couple of, I would say, interruptions because I moved once. And then it's funny you mentioned, I was talking to Shan today, and I was talking to Shan because Shandu McNeil, he played at St. Bonaventure after me. And we talked about like how I really should have had a storybook career when I got to Bonaventure, because I was recruited out of high school by a lot of heavy hitters. But I was telling him how I didn't have the academic discipline that I needed to have. So I had to go to junior college. Like, school was never challenging for me, but I didn't have the study habits. So I didn't have the family structure where, I came home and I did homework. Like, I had 6 sisters, 3 brothers. So my father was working. So it was like, I didn't have that. If I would have
Everything
had
was
that,
busy at home.
busy. So if I would have had that, I think, Bobby Knight wanted to offer me. You know, he called from Indiana. You know, before they offered Kenny Anderson, what's with the white hair at Georgia Tech,
Bobby
um,
Cremins.
Bobby Cremins. He called my mother. He talked to her. Like I had a lot of heavy hitters that wanted to get me, but academically I couldn't make that, so I had to go to junior college.
So what JUCO did you end up at? Sorry, what JUCO did you end up at?
Man, I ended up at South Mountain Community College. I stayed right home in Phoenix.
Okay.
I stayed right there, South Mountain Community College, and what's interesting is they didn't have a big name. They never really won. They were relatively kind of new on the scene, and the coaches who were recruiting me, once they found out I had to go to JUCO, you know, they used that as a tool, like say, don't go there. But you know, they had never made the playoffs, and we made the playoffs when I got there. So I know my team was the first team to ever make the playoffs. And if you look back, Arizona had a lot of big time players coming out of JUCO back then. Yeah,
That's true.
a lot. Yeah.
Did Lute Olson ever come try to recruit you?
Lou did not recruit me.
Wow.
He came to a lot of our practices. He was looking at my backcourt mate who was younger than me, Kevin. You know, he recruited him early. I don't know if that continued later, but yeah, Luke came to our school, and obviously with Sean Elliott, and you know, they were the program. They were a national program. But yeah, Lou, I liked Lou. He was a nice guy, but Lou, you know, I don't think I projected at that time to be a pro. And I think Lou was recruiting pros at that. Like he was trying to get guys who projected to be pros or who shot the skin off of it, like a Steve Kerr, you know, because Steve wasn't projected to be a pro, but he really could stretch the defense.
Right. So he was kind of like the Coach K of the West.
Yeah, he really was. If you look at the run he had, it's not really too many people you can compare to that run he had.
So how was South Mountain Community College? You were there for the full 2 years, correct?
Yes, I was. Yeah, I was there for 2 years. Played for a guy that I knew growing up. He knew my family, and it was like community college. You know, nice people. I really had people who were there to help me, and I enjoyed the time there. I played with a lot of talented guys. Like some of my teammates there were truly like tremendously talented players. We had a lot of guys that came from Detroit. We just had a really elite team. As a matter of fact, a few years ago, I looked at some of the old footage. I mean, it was like crazy athletics. But, you know, in JUCO, you have to be with a truly elite, like your leadership has to be special because typically you have a bunch of players that don't have the discipline academically.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have any bad social habits, but academically, I had to learn to be mature and stay locked in.
Right.
And that takes years to develop. You can't just say, all right, I'm gonna turn it on. I didn't develop those habits, Dave, until I got to grad school.
Yeah, I mean, that takes a lot.
It does.
So after South Mountain, when did St. Bonaventure come in?
They came in my last year at you know, at South Mountain Community. You know, they saw me, they needed a point guard, and they were towards the bottom of the Atlantic 10. So initially I was like, man, New York, you come from Arizona, you think New York, you think everything is, you hear New York, you think New York City. You know, like, you
Nobody's thinking about upstate New York. And trust
I didn't know there was a thing as upstate New York.
Yeah, and funny thing is, I went to school in upstate New York. Boy, is it cold.
It's on a different level.
So I know, I mean, if it was rough for me, I know it was rough for you.
Yeah, I asked the coach who recruited me, I was like, when he came down, I was like, his name was John Ruby. I was like, Coach, do you own snow? Does it snow a lot there? You know, because I didn't know, you know, you just read a little bit. Right. Wasn't like you could just open up a computer now and just blah, blah, blah and get everything. He goes, I've never owned a pair of snow boots. So I get there and literally it's October, like the first week of October, and it's like the snow is coming down heavy. I was like, Coach, you say you own a pair of snow boots? He said, I didn't. He said, I didn't tell you it didn't snow a lot. He said, I just told you I didn't own a pair of snow boots.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, it was polar opposite, polar opposite. It never, sun never shined, and it just snowed all the time.
Mm-hmm. So talk about when they were with your time with St. Bonaventure. It was the 2 years, correct?
I did 2 years there. Um, Again, had great teammates there, and it was, as a comprehensive like experience, it was great because I'd never been in the snow, never been back east, and I still remember like my first road trip. Like the first major road trip, it was a Philly swing. We played like St. Joe's, Temple, and I don't know we played LaSalle, but I know we played them because they were in the A10. And one of my teammates was from that area. And so I had a chance to hang out with him and see Philadelphia, and then you see John Chaney at the time, he was a legend, coach for
Mm-hmm.
Temple. And then my first game in the A10, I had to guard Mark Macon. He was projected to be a lottery pick.
Mm.
Um, and so he was a big point guard. So it was good to be able to challenge, like to see where you stack up, so my time at St. Bonaventure, like I said, it was abbreviated because I didn't have the great study skills that I needed. It was a small private school. And I think my career could have been just memorable, one for the record books, because I was ready from an athletic and from a skill set standpoint. I wanted a starting job right away. I got that right away, and I was ready to do damage. But and that's the whole motivation behind the book, because you have to be complete. It's not, you can't be imbalanced. And I was imbalanced as a student athlete at that time.
So your final game, you only played in one game total.
Oh no, I played my whole first year, and then I played probably half the games my second year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
because but yeah,
it
Sports
was,
Reference is showing us something different. But don't worry about that.
yeah. Somebody brought that to my attention. I was like, I don't know. Maybe it's so long ago they don't have accurate information, but
Right.
yeah, I had an opportunity. The platform was there for me to really do well. But that's why you got to be balanced, man. Like I said, me and my guy, we spoke about that earlier today. Just being in a position so that you can be successful on and off the court. And now all kids are that way. I raised my son and my daughter to be that way. But it wasn't always that. That wasn't always the picture back then.
Mm-hmm. Well, shout out to the St. Bonaventure University class of 1992.
That's right.
And that's the year I was born too. That's another funny thing about it.
I said, that's a great year.
Yes, it was. Oh yeah, and it was an Olympic year too. Dream team.
Dream team. Dream team. That's right.
So yeah. So after college, what was the first couple of years like after school was done?
What's interesting is in between my 2 years there, I was selected. I played on an all-star team, and I got to meet some guys who played for like Boston College. Like it was an all-star team of guys from like different conferences. And I don't know what conference Boston College was in. I don't know if they were in the Big East or not. But
No, they were in the Big East.
okay, so it was comprised of guys from multiple schools, and we went to Spain and we played a tour there against their pro teams, and we did like camps for the kids during the day. So, and one of my coaches on that team, he saw like, man, you're pretty talented. Your stats don't represent that. So, I was able to get into the NBA Summer League right after my time at St. Bonaventure. And back then it was played in LA. It wasn't played in it wasn't played in Vegas then. And I played on they had like 2 or 3 free agent teams. So I was on a free agent team. So like Jonathan Edwards, the center for Georgetown, was on my team. And my coach was Dwayne, what's his name? Dwayne, he was a coach, he used to coach the Toronto Raptors.
Dwayne Casey?
Dwayne Casey was my coach in the NBA All-Star, in the NBA Summer League, rather. He was my coach. And that was the first time I played for somebody. It was pretty interesting because he had this philosophy. He was like, hey, don't do anything to make yourself look stupid. He was like, if you know you can't do certain things, just don't do it. If you know you're good at certain things, do it. He was like, because you got all these NBA general managers and overseas scouts here, go ahead and make yourself look good. Like he just kept it really simple.
Right.
But I did that, and I realized right away that I wasn't going to go play in another country, and I wasn't going to be a top tier player. So I was like, I'm going to come back and get my graduate degree.
Wow.
So I came back and I got my graduate degree instead of trying to just milk it and keep playing. I was like, no, I just went ahead and get into the real world right now. And I did that. I stayed kind of local in Western New York, and I got a teaching job, and I became the varsity coach at the Randolph Academy, which was a school for kids who had problems at home. But man, they could hoop. They were athletic. So I was able to help those guys off the court, and we started a team at the Randolph Academy. I don't even think they're in the public school leagues anymore, but we got into the public school league. We made the playoffs. Like I built a program there, and then I ended up starting a travel program called the Western New York Shooting Stars. And we had some players. We put guys in the D1 ranks, like Justin Miller played at Siena. He was like 6'10" wing. Like I started that program, and we took those guys around the country and did well. Like all of our players got scholarships, and that's when I first started really getting heavy into the player development.
Wow. So talk about the Shooting Stars.
Man, I lived in Jamestown, New York, and that was interesting because it was a small town, and as you know, cold, snowy, but a lot of those kids didn't get any press. And I was like, man, some of these kids can really play, and there's nothing. The good kids had to either go to Rochester to play travel ball or Buffalo. Because, Buffalo, they were in Niagara Falls. Like one of the guys who played at Bonaventure, he was really good. He actually lives here now. Like they're putting out guys like Tim Wynn, Jason Rowe, went to Iona, but from Jamestown, those guys weren't getting recruited. So I was like, you know what? I know how to get this done. So I was able to connect with some people, started the program, got kids from Western Pennsylvania, Western New York, and man, we got on the road. We did it. We did that thing, and we built it, while I was there, built it up.
What were some of the events that you guys got to play in?
Bob Gibbons used to have a big event.
TOC.
I think, and it used to be held. One of them was held at like Ohio State. We played there. That's back when they could hold travel events on college campuses. You can't do that anymore.
I missed that. Yeah, 2011 was the last year. After that, everything fell apart.
Yeah. So we played in Bob Gibbons. Like we played in a lot of events so long ago. I don't remember half of them, but we really were able to get our guys out and on that recruiting circuit, and get them seen because up until that point, they had no vehicle.
Yeah, man. So how did it feel getting your master's degree from St. Bonaventure?
You know what? That was an accomplishment. I guess at the time I didn't value it as much. Not that I didn't value it. I was always goal oriented. So, and I was a lot more mature. Like I said, I had study habits then. I was working as a teacher, a coach, and my son had just been born. So it was like just knocking things off the list, and my college teammates were doing good. Like one of my college teammates that I was close to, he was on the staff, the head assistant with Gary Waters at Kent, and they were killing people, getting to the NCAA tournament, then they ended up getting a job at Rutgers. So getting my master's was it was like something that I saw was a part of my trajectory, like what I had to do, so it was like, okay, what's next? Boom. Okay. Got that done. What's next? So that was my mentality back then, just focusing on the next goal.
1998 was also another good year as you got your master's degree. That's big time.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
I mean, a lot of people, they say that they want to go back to school, and many, for financial reasons, a lot of them can't go back because they owe too much money. Well, I'm in that situation right now, but I mean, there's a lot of those that's worse off than I am, because getting that master's degree is no joke. When you went back to get your master's, did you get some type of scholarship then?
I didn't. I mean, the first year I did, you basically you have like 5 years to play four, or if
Mm-hmm.
you're a JUCO, you got three to play two,
Mm-hmm.
and your coaches have a little flexibility with that. But
Mm-hmm.
I had to finance that for the majority on my own.
Wow.
But I didn't want to. I just didn't want to have to do that 10 years, after the fact, and then, I was like, I'm teaching. Let me just go ahead and get it out the way right now. Just get it done, and so I'm glad I did. I'm really happy that I did.
So you've been doing the player development thing for over 25 years. Um,
Yes.
Talk about, what it's like, developing players.
What's interesting, Dave, is that when it comes to player development, a lot of people think you just get out there and you find some drills to do. And you do have to build comprehensive skill set when players are younger. You have to help them improve in every aspect, from ball handling to shooting, the skills, the fundamentals. That's why I call them the basics. They got to be solid. But when you're helping players develop, you better have a long-term plan. And so that's my thing as a player development specialist is be consistent and then have a long-term plan and constantly be assessing the players that you're working with so that you can keep their game going, just going up, elevating, going to the top. So now when I work with players who are like elite at the college level or pro level, the first thing I want to do is get video. Like I don't like to step in the gym with anybody um, without having broken down or just reviewed. I need to see their game. I need to see if they handle pressure well. If they have certain tendencies. Do they shoot it well off the dribble? Do they shoot it equally as well or better off the catch? Do they finish around their rim? Do they make people better? Like I need that information so that my training sessions and my whole program approach can be, it can be worth it, can be valid, be meaningful. Because if I train you, if we're doing player development sessions, the goal is for it to show up in games. So I need to make sure that I'm focused with the way I approach it.
So you also coached at Central Cabarrus when
Yep.
you moved to North Carolina. Talk about your time at Central Cabarrus. Did I say it right?
Yep. You're
Okay.
saying it right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, man, it's some of my favorite kids I've ever coached.
Mm-hmm.
They were, it was a group that I bonded with because I was young at the time too. So we were doing things that were unconventional. They hadn't really won a lot in the years before I took over. I initially
Mm-hmm.
was an assistant to Brian King, and he was good, man. I learned a lot from him. He ran our practices. I didn't appreciate it at the time, but he ran our practices like a college. We were efficient. Once we got into the season, we weren't in long, like hour and a half max. Got a lot of shooting in, um, and then eventually, I ended up a few years later getting the head job,
Mm-hmm.
and it was an experience that I treasure because I was able to see those guys go. Literally, when I took over in the middle of the season, we were tied for the worst, tied for last,
Wow.
and we ended up being tied for first at the end of the season. We went
Wow,
from
that's
worst to
big.
first, and we made the state playoffs. And those guys had never experienced that. And we have a bond. Like even to this day, like my son was young. He used to come in the locker room with me, and so they have stories about Coach Chris from now. We see each other, we laugh. But that was a great experience, and it was a good time. Good time.
Mm. So how long did you coach at Central Cabarrus?
I was there for 3 years. I was there
So
for 3 years.
from what years?
Whoa, maybe 2010, 11, 2012.
Oh wow. So
Mm-hmm.
3 seasons. Wow. So you were there for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, um, what advice would you give to a lot of people that want to be player development specialists or quote unquote trainers? Because that's a lot. That's a overused word nowadays.
Yeah, I think one of the things you got to do is you need to be sincere. I think there are a number of trainers today who train for just to get the name out there, or say I can get in the gym with this guy and then get put videos up, and nothing's wrong with that. I mean, if you're trying to get clients, I understand that, but I think you need to be sincere if you're really going to be like about being the best that you can be and helping players improve. Because one thing that trainers need to know, you don't have to be better than the player that you're training. That's not, you're not a player, you're a trainer. So Tiger Woods' golf coach was never better than Tiger Woods, but he knew how to help him improve.
Right.
So as a trainer, your goal is to be able to help your player improve. Be sincere, be honest, and do it for the right reasons. And if you're going to be a trainer, you got to put in the work. It's one thing to do all the drills, but be about implementation and application. I think that's what it's about. So if you can implement this into their game, and then you got to apply it within the team structure too. Like you have to know time and situation. Like you got to train. That's why I don't really call myself a trainer. I coach. I'm in one of the best travel programs in America. But when you talk about player development, it's comprehensive. Time and situation. A lot of players, man, they look great. When you get pressure on them, it's like they just melt. Like you have to train the mental, the psychological. Like for me, Dave, if you want to be elite, like I work with a lot of NBA and even work with some teams. I think it's about emotional maturity. When you see certain players, think about this. Rondo didn't start one game in the finals. And the one game he wasn't on the floor at the end, that's the game they lost. Every other game, Rondo was on the floor at the end because his emotional maturity, he doesn't flinch under pressure. That ball was in his hands. We talk about LeBron, but to go back, that ball was in Rondo's hands in those games they won. So when you're training, you have to train the total game. You can't train moves. But you got to train, make the player better individually, but they have to be able to command that space on the floor. So train it comprehensively with implementation and application.
Well said. So let's talk about the real reason why we're here. Your brand new book that's coming out soon called I Am D1. How to navigate the world of travel basketball. Let's talk about it. What was the purpose of you writing the book?
Man, I'm gonna share this story. I'm telling it a lot lately. Some of the things that I'm doing, but the whole origin of the book came from every night after being at practices or training sessions, I would end up in the garage talking on the phone before I would get out of my car to parents or players or both. And literally, I would do that for 45 minutes, some nights longer. My wife would always look out. So one day I got in and she says, "You need to write a book." I'm like, she's like, if you write a book, like you're repeating the same information. If you write a book, you already know what the questions are. You already know what people struggle with. You already know the direction that families and players want to go in. You know what their goal is, go D1, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But that's what prompted me. And, being in education, I was able to say, you know what, this is feasible. I can do this. And I wanted to help players. And I always thought, man, I'm just helping the players in my sphere. What about all these other families? So this is a way to really help these other families that I can't physically touch. And it's funny, the people that I previewed the book to, man, I'm getting some incredible feedback. I'm so thankful. I'm just getting some really, and it's not friends. These are people I asked to be very critical. And they're like, this needs to get to the masses.
Well said, man. I know that book is going to be a huge inspiration when it comes out. And I feel that, some good literature needs to get out to the people, because a lot of social media, is still controlling the minds of the people. But, as long as people find something that they're interested in, then they'll definitely read it. And most importantly, travel basketball is that world that, you know, you've seen a lot of good and bad things go down. The good is, the kids are getting the scholarships. The downside is a lot of kids, they get corrupted. You know, a lot of people have asked me why I don't really cover middle school basketball. I feel like the kids, like when you're under 13, it's your time to have fun. You should enjoy yourself. But once, once the kids turn 13, it becomes a business. And then that's when the ugliness starts to creep out. And then by 18, a lot, like you see a lot of these kids that were ranked, that were young when they were younger, you never hear from them again. Or some of them just stop playing basketball entirely. So, the game is kind of like a gift and a curse for a lot of people.
I agree. I agree.
So yeah, tell us when the book is coming out and where they can find it.
Well, right now we're scheduled for February release, and it will be available on Amazon. And also we will have some national retailers as well. Those details will be worked out, and you'll be able to find it in key areas, key places. We're building some great partnerships throughout the country. And don't be surprised where you see this book. It will not be something that's hidden. You won't have to look hard to find it. We are going to make every effort, but here's the key. We want to make sure that this is something that even if a kid doesn't necessarily like to read or parents don't have time, this is going to be something, we're going to impact the culture. The way this book is aligned, when we talk about the opening, we don't call the table of contents the table of contents. It's our roster. So when you look at the topics that we have, the chapters, and you go down that, you start to see, man, this is something I need to read. And once people have picked it up, I'm thankful that they said, hey, I got a hit from one parent / program director out in West Coast. He was like, text me like 1 a.m. Hey, I'm 2 chapters in, man. I can't put it down. And I'm happy because that's really what the goal is. And we're not telling people what to do. We're not a guide. We're giving you options on these are the options and why maybe you want to look at A, B, and C. What fits your situation best? But these are the options you should be looking at.
Well said. So this is one of my favorite questions that I love to ask before I lead up to the final question. So, if you could go back in a time machine to 1987, what would you tell a young Chris Meadows at 18 years old as he's navigating, high school, trying to get through high school and trying to get into college to play ball, but he's struggling academically?
Wow, man, that's a great question. I'm not even going to take that lightly. Seriously, like if I could go back and talk to myself then, that's just the possibilities were endless. And I'm very thankful and blessed that I am where I am today. It's been a great life to this point, but what I would share with a younger version of myself, would be to really focus in on being a better student, and don't just play the game to play the game. Like play the game with a level of purpose and preparation that it deserves for the talent that you have. Like that's what I would tell myself. Like really, and I was pretty disciplined, but I could have been, when you look at the guys that I came out of high school with and who I was compared with, and not that that means a whole lot at this point, but I recall a story where I saw when I was at the NBA Summer League, Lee Mayberry had just finished playing. I think he was in the NBA with the Bucks. He had won a national championship with Arkansas Razorbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And we played each other in one of those big time events in high school. And we fought like right to the buzzer. Like we battled each other. And afterwards, we hugged each other and we introduced, but it was packed. I'll never forget all the coaches that were there. And that's when I started getting those offers like from Indiana and stuff like that. But he said, "Hey, Chris, man, I've been looking for you. Where were you?" Like he expected me to be on that national platform. So if I could say something to a younger version of myself, it would be like really get with tutors and establish habits, because the work wasn't hard, but I didn't have the habits to sit down and do it. And also prepare, give this basketball thing the respect and the preparation it deserves if you want to really play it beyond college. And if I would have someone that I cared about and respected sit me down and say, hey, you really need to like focus on this thing. Like it could take you not just to play D1, but you can play beyond this. Um, that would have been special to me. That would have changed my whole thought process.
Final question. What's next in the future for Chris Meadows and Monument Skills Academy?
Well, here's the key. I don't really run that anymore.
Ooh.
I do, like I've been heavily involved. I still do a lot of player development, but it's individualized.
Okay.
So I don't have the facility. I don't have the overhead. So with that, and then I've been spending the last 4 years, I've been with FBC, a girls program out of Atlanta. So my daughter played for them, with Keisha, with the team, with the FBC United, and I've been with Mo, and we started a branch here. But what's next for me? Is from a professional standpoint. I just told you that I wish someone would have shared with me to be more focused coming out of high school in terms of giving this game the respect that it deserved, to take, like, maximize my potential. My quest is to take IMD1, How to Conquer the World of Travel Basketball, and impact every young person, every basketball player, every family throughout globally. And then I already hit them with the follow-up for the kids who are already in college. My quest is to have an impact, and not just helping them to stay focused, but helping them navigate this road, because you said earlier, it gets pretty crazy after that 13-year-old mark. Helping everybody understand and navigate this thing so that you don't have to wish you could do it all over again. Because right now, there's nothing in that space that can really be a guide or a companion with these families and players. So I'll shoot you, if I haven't already, I'll shoot you like a preliminary look, and you'll see what I mean by the way it's written. But that's what's next. IMD1, that's what the focus is for me.
Chris, thank you for coming on to share your testimonial, and I wish you and the book nothing but the best moving forward.
Man, Dave, thank you for having me. And man, you're what's next for you? I hate to flip the script, but you're a great interviewer. Well, what's next for you, man? You really have it. I really enjoyed your show.
Let's see. What's next for me? Trying to cover these more college games if I'm able to. Due to this pandemic, everything has been kind of slowed up as far as games are concerned. But, taking the time out to distribute whatever content I have left, getting back into writing, and just getting ready for the spring. When AAU opens back up again, I'm hoping that there will be an EYBL season, or a grassroots season. But most importantly, I hope that that this COVID-19 pandemic passes, because it's been a very ugly year for so many people, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Man, that's exciting. That's exciting. And one thing I want to say, Dave, if you don't mind, before I get out,
Go ahead.
I want to just say, man, sending my prayers to Keontae, his family at Florida. I know he's still in the hospital. I read that earlier on Twitter.
Yeah.
And, that young man was having a phenomenal year. And it's an awful scene. So I want to continue to pray for his family and him. And also, I want to just remind the fans out there listening, you can find us, you can find the book at imd1thebook.com, imd1thebook.com. And here's a look right here.
There it goes, guys. Everybody, this is episode 90 of Hoops Talk with Dave's Joint. Shout outs to my guy Chris Meadows for coming on to share his testimonial. Go cop that book, I Am D1, How to Conquer the World of Travel Basketball, which is coming out in February. For those that don't, for those that support Chris, for those that from North Carolina or Tempe, Arizona, or Phoenix, Arizona, or some in New York, or anybody from St. Bonaventures, go check out this episode on YouTube, Facebook, and IGTV. Stay safe, stay blessed. Peace.